So, and we're going to get into your faith here for the viewers in momentarily. But on that point about how you kind of accepted it and you let God kind of take the steering wheel, did you feel like that gave you a sense of peace? Like, I can do my job better, even though I know what's inevitable, because I'm okay with how this is going to end. Is that kind of...
You nailed it. I've been telling warriors for 20 years after that. My faith gave me this sense of peace. And it actually made me able to focus on the enemy and on my men so that I didn't have to worry about myself. Like I've resigned myself to what happens to me next. Now I can focus on my men and keeping them alive. Now I can focus on defeating the enemy and not making mistakes tonight because I've taken myself out of the equation. And it was so noticeable that my buddies started asking questions about it the next day. Now,
That's...
I just want to say to your audience real quick, like if it sounds insane to send Struecker's Humvees back out in the city streets after they've just gone through this crazy firefight, you'd need to understand the way that Rangers communicate, with the way that the Rangers have sworn, they swear their lives to one another, and they literally do it almost every day. They pledge their life to one another in what's called the Ranger Creed. And the Ranger Creed is my way of pledging to my buddy, I will never let you fall into the hands of the enemy. And if your body falls there, I will go get it out. And you swear to me that you'll do the same. So when my boss said, go back out there to the crash site, I don't even know if anybody's alive, but I do know I have made a pledge to these guys. And I'm going back out there and I'm bringing their bodies back to their family, even if it cost me my life tonight. And I know my buddies would have done the same for me. So there wasn't a question of going back out. It was just a question of where am I going to find the strength or the courage to do
it? And so you obviously do that. That scene is depicted in the movie as well. Take us through from when you leave the base to what happens. Now you're round two. Let's call it round two for simplicity. Yeah. You're back out there. Do you fight your way to the crash site? Yeah. Like, so it's just nonstop firefights, one after another.
This is the point where I really want to highlight all of the Rangers that are trained shooters are already in the city streets and they're already fighting for their lives. There's a handful of supporters that came over with us. They're part of our unit and they all get the same training, but their primary job are cooks and supply clerks and intel specialists. And when we get notified, hey, you got to go back out there and you got to get to the Durant crash site, it was pretty obvious. We don't have enough guns. So I need more guns. And I just asked all of the supporters, hey, if you've got a gun, would you be willing to jump on the Humvees with me? And every single one of them said, sure, I'll grab my gun. And I'm talking cooks and the ammunition guy. And I call him the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. But they all grabbed their guns and they all jumped on the vehicles. And they all rode back out into the city streets with me. And every one of them knew I may die doing this. But none of them hesitated, not one of them. And they stayed on those vehicles with me all night long, till 9 o'clock the next morning, fighting back and forth. It never let up until I arrived back at the base. The bullets didn't stop flying. But yeah, we fought our way to the Durant crash site. I had a helicopter that was in the air, and it was giving me some directions over the radio. But I got into such an intense gunfight that I told the helicopter man, if I keep driving people through this, I'm going to kill more than we're going to rescue. We need to find another route. And as I was driving around the city to come into the crash site from the back side of the city, I linked up with a bunch of Rangers from my unit that were on vehicles that were totally destroyed, like the dead bodies just hanging off the sides. So we stopped what we were doing and drove those guys back to the base. I came back a second time. And that's when I thought, basically, we had everybody rounded up, but I learned, no, we're split up all over the city and we can't keep sending these Humvees in there because they're not armored. It's just fiberglass. So we need armored vehicles. And we asked the United Nations at about midnight, would you loan us your armored vehicles? So the Pakistanis showed up with 2 of their tanks, and the country of Malaysia had just arrived and they had a bunch of armored personnel carriers and they all met us. And together we rolled out in the city streets. I stayed on the Humvees, but we rolled out there at about midnight and stayed out there until 9 o'clock the next morning.
I just want to say real quick for you and the audience and everyone, what you just said about the cooks and the intel guys and everyone else grabbing guns, that makes me insanely proud to be an American. I think that if that doesn't sum up the spirit of what the USA can be all about, that is, I got chills right now. That's something else.
I can one up that one for you, David. That night, the Malaysians get into a big firefight, and a couple of their men get killed right next to us on the city streets. And the commander of those forces pulled me off to the side the next morning, and he said, Jeff, this is the first firefight our country's been in since World War II. And this is the first time we've lost soldiers in combat since 1944. And we would not do this for any other country on earth but America. And we're proud to fight and to die right next to you. And I can't say enough about those Malaysians, man. They just stayed with us all night long.
It really puts things into perspective. I mean, it's the problems people think they have that might be really big in the grand scheme. When you hear stuff like that, you realize it can get way, way worse.